and welcome to Women in Retail Talks, the podcast where C-suite executive women in the retail space share their stories of professional growth, leadership development, personal journeys, and more. I'm Marie Albajes, Senior Editor of Women in Retail, a membership-based community of executive women at leading retailers and brands. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by Claudia Lima-Guinehut, the Executive Vice President and Chief Merchandising Officer at Claire's, who many of you know as the teen global fashion brand powerhouse, known for its ear piercings and accessories. So Claudia and I will talk about her career journey to Claire's, how she maintains Claire's legacy while also being innovative and adaptive, and what she hopes her own legacy will be. So Claudia, thank you so much for joining me.
I'm so excited to be here. And Marie, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited. I know we met briefly at NRF all those months ago, and I knew I wanted to talk to you. So I think we can jump right into questions. I'd love for you to start with just your overall career journey in the retail industry, from your early roles at like Zara and Ralph Lauren to, now your current position at Claire's. Walk us through that timeline.
Well, first, it seems like it was yesterday, but it's been 25 years. I've been fortunate enough to have very varied roles within, to your point, with Zara or Ralph Lauren or some of the other brands that I've been with that have been apparel. They have been ready to wear. They have been with shoes, accessories, kids, and now back to one of my favorite categories, jewelry and accessories. I began in merchandising, but throughout my career, I have had roles that involved product development, trend, international franchising, wholesale, and I've been fortunate enough to launch brands from the ground up. And I always say, when I think about that journey, you should never be afraid to try something new, um, because you never know what it's going to bring and what doors it's going to open. And be curious and open to the opportunities. And as I reflect on it, while at the time sometimes my journey was not a straight line, it did give me like really diverse experience that's helped me to where I am today.
Mm-hmm. You're not the first on this podcast to say that your career journey is not a straight line. I think we at Women in Retail embrace those non-linear career journeys. And so I hope you can elaborate a little bit more on the non-linearness of your career. When did you know that it was the right time to pursue something new? And how did you kind of evaluate that decision and finally come to kind of weighing the pros and cons?
Well, I think for me, it always started with, can I learn something from this? Is there a skill set that I don't have today that I will have at the end of, my next journey? And is it exciting to me? Is it also challenging? Um, and again, for me, that became really important, to not operate from a place of what I would call fear, because sometimes what we know and what's our comfort zone, it's easier to stay within that. But again, I always thought about what can I learn from this? What other skill sets is it bringing to the table? How does it help me grow professionally? And then also, what do I want to do in 3 to 5 years? And does this kind of like, while not being that straight line, does it just open up more opportunities, for me to be able to get to where I want to? So that's part of the reason why I went into product development, because someday when I thought about it back then, I was like, I want to be the head of product. But if I'm going to be the head of product, that involves not only merchandising, it involves product development, it involves trend, it involves design, it involves all these different pieces, which in some ways necessitates not a straight path. So I've always, I guess, stayed curious, on what I could learn. And I think being a lifelong student is something that has been at the core of the decisions I've made.
Mhm. I love what you said about, not approaching it from a place of fear. I feel like there's often a fine line between like, yes, this new role is going to be challenging, but is it going to be so challenging that I feel like a little bit of an imposter? I mean, we talk about imposter
Yes,
syndrome all the time on this podcast. And knowing, you mentioned getting out of your comfort zone a little bit. It's a fine line of knowing where that comfort zone is and how far to push yourself out of it, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And it's one of the things that being a woman in retail, I think we tend to always want to be perfectionists and we want to be the very best that we are. And sometimes this pushing outside of your comfort zone is being okay with that. I'm going to be learning as I go. And being comfortable with that and not being perfect is super important. So like you said, there's a fine line between your comfort zone and saying, okay, I know 70% of the role, I'm going to learn 30% of it, or maybe I know 60% of it and I'm going to have to learn 40. So that's where I have to put my effort and energy, as I start. But like also, I think being really clear on that so that you're setting yourself up for success,
Mhm.
and having a plan, and I think being really transparent with your own self of like the areas you're going to have to like lean into to get the experience, to become better at it, etc. I think that does go a really long way so that you don't get frustrated, as you try new roles and gain new exposure and have new responsibilities and have to engage with different stakeholders.
Yeah. Yeah, so walk us through what that looked like for you when you joined Claire's. I mean, I think it wasn't that long ago that you took the role of chief merchandising officer. So, in practice, what strategies have you implemented there to make sure that, you are constantly learning, but you're also being a leader?
So I think it starts with being consumer obsessed, and making sure we have merchandising strategies that are culturally relevant, that innovate, have differentiated product, and the store experience that starts to become more experiential and fun,
Mhm.
are some of my biggest priorities coming into this role. Like it seems like yesterday, but I've been in the role for 10 months.
Mhm.
And within that time, those have been some of my biggest priorities. Leveraging data to inform our decisions so that we can marry the art and science into how we remain a leader in the space, both from a product assortment, but also our piercing services, is really important to me. When I think of the best merchants as we move forward, it really is this marriage of art and science to inform what we're doing so that you have really informed decisions, but you can maintain that human connection and aspect of it because so much of what we do is driving emotion. So I think that human element is extremely, extremely important. And again, when we think about our consumer, Gens Alphas, like we love to call them, being authentic to them is extremely important, making sure that we're listening to them, and being agile and reacting quickly, are also some of the things that, culturally, I've implemented since joining Claire's. And again, it goes back to trend spotting, consumer listening, and, as we think about this, one great example that comes to mind for me, or like a couple of really good examples, is we've had our Hello Kitty launch at the beginning of June, and we're super excited about the way we approached it. Very differently than what we've done in the past. We did it through a 360-degree campaign. We've had like some great collaborators help us with our window experience. We have a takeover of the front of the store with product. And that's the kind of really emotional experience,
Mm.
with exclusive product to us that really drives a reason for our consumers to come to us. Or if I think about our beauty launch, earlier in the year, like really consumer listening with this demographic and understanding that fragrance and beauty is super important to them. And why not? Should we not play in that space? That's like a great white space for us to play in. And that's been super successful for us as well. So these are like a couple of examples of things that you may not traditionally associate with Claire's, but that we're really leaning into from a social conversation, cultural moments, and just like trend moments and trend spotting.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head as to what I was going to ask you. I mean, all those things that you listed are really innovative. You're implementing all these new things, and yet Claire's as a company is a legacy. I mean, I was going to Claire's when I was a little girl. So how do you, and I'm sure you hear that all the time and you get asked this question all the time, but how do you ensure that Claire's legacy gets maintained while also adapting to the evolving preferences and the expectations of today's consumer? You called them Gen Alpha, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha. Are they as aware or concerned about Claire's legacy? How do you kind of fit all of that in?
So, Claire's, to your point, I went to Claire's when I was a teen. Claire's has been a destination for self-expression for 60 years. And that's the beautiful thing. We have a powerful brand that transcends generations. Not many brands are built on self-expression. And when I think about that, really Claire's was very much a pioneer in that kind of thinking, 60 years ago. We have set out to transform ourselves, like you were saying before, from a global retail business to a global brand powerhouse that's part of our consumers' lives in a way that is authentic and engaging. And I think what's changed is that it's become a two-way conversation with our consumers, and it's touch points across their whole life, right? Whether it's physically or digitally, and making sure that we're there where it matters to them. So I think what we represent as a brand and why we exist continues to be a place and a destination for self-expression and inclusivity. And I actually think that it's never been more important for a generation than it is now for the Gen Zs and Generation Alphas or Gen Alphas. Like those two, if you will, like core elements of who we are as a brand are very much really important values for them. So I happen to think that like it's kind of like the right generation for this
Hmm.
brand at this moment. And then what we need to do is make sure that we're connecting with them in where they are. So whether that's digitally, whether that is in store, part of the reason why we expanded, into our CPG business. You can find us in a Macy's, you can find us in a Walmart, you can find us in Gallery Lafayette's in Europe. Like we're really about being where the consumer is as we move forward.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the kind of store within a store concept that obviously other brands have embraced as well. But I wonder what impact you anticipate these expansions will have on Claire's global presence. I mean, you mentioned Galerie de Lafayette. You guys are everywhere now. So what kind of results and can you expect with in terms of customer engagement, in terms of kind of your global presence?
Yeah, I mean, the goal is always to maintain the brand's relevance and to be where our consumers are. And we'll continue on that path. And the interesting thing is that what we've learned is that, it opens up to different consumers
Yeah.
that may not have walked through the mall, that are going to mass retailers for convenience or drug for convenience or Galleries Lafayette because they're, shopping another brand as well. So it does really help us from a customer acquisition perspective, as well as just brand relevancy. And I think it's just the beginning, because there's a lot more of the universe that the Claire's brand can, expand into from a category perspective that we're not doing yet.
Anything that you can kind of tease or reveal in that universe?
More to come, more to come, but we're really excited about what it can mean for us. And this really has come from our consumers telling us what they want from us. And,
Hmm.
just to give you a sense of what they've told us they want, I mean, they want everything from room
Mm.
to apparel to non-apparel, as like going as far as like cafe shops,
Mm.
and Claire's bubble tea destination. So it's a big universe of what we can do and where we can go, and we're going to listen to them. And we've gone into Roblox with Shimmerville.
Yeah.
We've also signed a deal with Sony for a limited series. And we'll continue to work on these type of things. We've done an audiobook. We will also have a physical book upcoming, as well for the back half of the year. So really connecting on all levels of the brand, and wherever our consumers are.
Hmm. And then you also have kind of recently introduced Pierced by Claire's, which is a little bit of a reimagining of the piercing experience, if you will. And I mean, I got my ears pierced at Claire's. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what that kind of new identity looks like, what was kind of the inspiration behind that initiative, and how it aligns with everything you just said.
Yeah, so funny enough, I got both my piercings at Claire's. My first piercing, and then my second piercing once I started my role.
Nice.
um, but Claire's has a 40-year plus history with piercing. We're the
Mhm.
leader in the space. But we recognize that to stay connected and to resonate with Gens Alpha, it was time to create a distinct point of view and a cultural voice for our piercing business that, again, like I said before, is all about inclusivity and self-expression, which at the end of the day is at the core of everything we do at Claire's. And then also, how do we interact with our consumers? So we're investing in capabilities like pre-appointment, in-store, aftercare, virtual earring try-on, and digital aftercare notifications. So making sure we are also in the digital space, um, at a level that our consumers expect from us, given, their phygital world, as I would call
Mhm.
it.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, that's a lot about Claire's, and I'm glad we got into that. But I want to also make sure that we talk about you as a leader, both at Claire's now and just overall, in your career. I'd love for you to share kind of some of the values that really guide your leadership style and how those show up in your everyday at Claire's.
So I would start by saying I live by three principles, and they're clarity, vision, and empathy. And I always like to emphasize the empathy part of it because, again, as women in retail, there's misconception that empathy is weakness, and it's
Mm.
not. I actually think it helps us to connect with our teams, with our consumers, and empowering my team through direct and constructive feedback that is kind, providing support when they need it, and listening, are key in my mind to creating an environment where everyone has a seat at the table. And personally for me as a Latina who moved to the US when I was a tween, I know firsthand the barriers that still exist in our industry for true inclusivity. And again, while great strides have been made, we do need to do more for everyone to have a seat and a voice,
Mhm.
particularly in as you get to executive levels, across the board. And I also think just accepting when you've made a mistake, and being like really honest and vulnerable about it, are also really important, principles and qualities that I think I aspire to as a leader, and I try to model to my teams.
Yeah. Say those three principles again for me.
Clarity, vision, and empathy.
Great, thank you. And I liked what you said about the empathy part, specifically providing support when they need it. What does that look like in practice? How are you providing support for your direct reports and for the entire company?
Oh, I think that it comes down to how can I help you do your job
Mm.
faster? How can I remove roadblocks? Is there clarity that you need? Can I be an advocate for you across the organization, maybe in something that you're not getting headway on, whether it be technology that you need to have a better work-life balance so that you're spending your time analyzing and not gathering data, or whether it's trying to build a better partnership with another cross-functional team, and how can I facilitate that, whether it's helping you if you have some soft skills that you need to develop, confidence, or I find that some of my leaders, and particularly women, if I'm going to be honest, there's like this self-deprecation
Mm.
aspect of, I'm not doing it well enough. I'm not delivering what I need to deliver. And I think that is part of the support of being a sounding board, to say, being that mirror almost that says, no, that's not how you should be positioning this. You're learning, you're growing, and it's a dynamic industry and will continue to grow and learn. The most important thing is you learn, you pivot, and then you move forward, right? So
Mhm.
I do think that for me, those are like really important ways to be able to support the team.
It's all about women supporting other women.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm. So, in the few minutes that we have left, we've talked about the legacy of Claire's, and we've talked about kind of your non-linear career journey and looking at, the next 3 to 5 years as you're mapping out your career journey. But looking towards the future, is there a certain legacy that you yourself hope to leave, either at Claire's or just in general in the retail industry?
Absolutely. I hope to help shape the next generation of leaders, and all leaders, but definitely in particular women leaders that are fearless, that are curious, that are empathetic, and are able to use their self-expression to connect with consumers in an authentic and unexpected way that ultimately creates magic. And as I think about Claire's, I envision Claire's as a global brand powerhouse with lifestyle categories of business, books, TV series, continued metaverse, apparel, maybe coffee shops, who knows? And being part of our consumers' life in all areas. And for me, the future is super, super exciting. But to me, the most important thing is to be able to help shape the next generation of leaders in a positive way.
Do you mentor? Do you have people that report to you as mentors
I
or as
do,
mentees?
I do. I do mentor, and I have people that report into me or have reported into me,
Yeah.
no longer work for me.
Yeah.
And I'm their mentor. And I like to think that they can come to me, when they have like a career transition question, or a question of, an opportunity that has come up, or they're struggling with something. I like to have my door always open
Mhm.
for that. But I do, and it's with current as well as past team members that have become friends
Yeah.
through the years.
How do you approach that mentor relationship? Is it pretty informal, or are you guys kind of sitting down and formulating like a formal plan? What does that conversation look like?
I think it depends on the
Mm.
situation. It's sometimes very informal, and it comes up when needed, and then other times it's truly like, I need to figure out what I'm doing next, and then what that means for me in 5 years and where I want to go. And then that is more, okay, let's sit down and go through goals, aspirations, and how we can get you there. And, what are some steps that you can take to support that journey. So it really depends on the situation, and it
Mhm.
depends on the person. But it's a little bit of both.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like they are lucky to have you in their corner. I love what you said about, making sure that you're there for the next generation of female leaders. That is obviously what we're all about here at Women in Retail as well. But I think that's all the time that we have for today. But Claudia, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much. And I cannot wait to see what is next for Claire's.
Marie, thanks again for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please go to womeninretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Women in Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review our show. Lastly, if you're a female retail leader interested in joining our community at Women in Retail Leadership Circle, visit womeninretail.com/apply. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Women in Retail Talks.